discussion. Ayan, kung saan magbibigay lamang kami ng ilang katanungan sa ating mga debaters at hahayaan namin kayong magsagutan. Again, wala tayong sinasabing tama or mali. Kumbaga, ang ating programa ay nagnanais lamang na paliwanag at mas mapalawig pa ang ating kaalaman gamit ang opinyon ng mga kabataan hinggil sa ating social issues. At dahil dyan, narito na ang unang katanungan. Isa sa mga kine-question tungkol sa usaping ito ay ang pagkakaroon ng sapat na kaalaman ng ating mga guro o yung mga magtuturo ng ating mental health subject. So who do you think is qualified to teach the subject?
Hindi naman po talaga mental health yung field of study ng ating mga professional teachers. Although we have our respect towards teachers, towards sa kung anong subject ang tinuturo nila, we can ask for help from those professionals talaga na kabilang sa field ng emotional health, emotional intelligence sa subject na ito, such as professional psychiatrists and psychologists na makakapag-orient sa mga teachers. In that way, they will be enlightened about the situations or the emotions or the circumstances na madalas nararamdaman ng mga teenagers around our age.
I think all teachers are qualified to teach for the mental health subject, but I do not think that they should switch their field of expertise from their original field of expertise to mental health. There are psychologists that are experts in this field of expertise. They should not switch from one subject to another, as it would add stress to them. And if we are going to address the risk of the mental health of the youth, we might be putting the risk of the mental health of the teachers as well. I don't think it is a good trade-off to risk the mental health of the teachers just to save the youth, as all mental health of all individuals should matter and none should be put at risk.
Hindi naman namin na sinasabing dapat mag-switch yung mga teachers na expertise. Okay? Ano pang silbi ng mga seminar para hindi nila attenan, di ba? Kaya nga tayo may mga seminar. Sinasabi mo na dapat ibigay na lang natin yung tungkulin na yun sa mga psychiatrists. Alam mo ba na 5 lang yung mga wards na available for child and 60 psychiatrists lang yung are practicing para sa mental health ng mga kaedad natin? Ibig sabihin, sa tingin mo ba, kaya ba nilang i-cater yung pangangailangan natin mga students? Kaya ba nila tayong i-assist to figure out what we really feel sa ganun kaunting psychiatrist?
Let's just look at it this way. The increased diversity of pupils' mental health needs can guarantee further pressures also on teachers who may feel ill-equipped to cope effectively. So if school teachers are to conceive of their role as one that begins with the notion of what it is to be a whole person and education as the development of the person, then teachers should also be will also require the help of mental health specialists. So with that, we can now insert the saying, you cannot give what you don't have. If teachers are unable to address their own mental health issues, and they will be also needing the help of mental health specialists, then how could they possibly handle the mental health issues of their children?
Okay. So, actually, very valid points yung sinasabi natin dito, no? Siguro segundahan ko na lang ng follow-up question. Nasa usapin tayo sa who is qualified to teach the subject of mental health. So, kayo, ang sinasabi nyo is that meron tayong mga professionals. And at the same time, kulang din yung mga professionals na maaaring mag-exercise nito. Kaya naman sinasabi nyo, bakit teachers ang kailangan magturo nito kung hindi sila well-equipped to handle their own? How can they kumbaga take on the burden pa of the mental health din ng kanilang mga estudyante? Siguro, let's state it in the fact na talagang ituturo na ang mental health subject sa mga paaralan. How should we address the concerns ng employment and yung fees on charging, for example, pag nag-employ tayo ng expert, ng psychiatrist or psychologist, how should schools address this concern? Dapat ba they should be giving more? How should they be compensating them? And at the same time, sa mga nagsasabing hindi dapat teachers ang natuturo or maaaring dapat nga teachers nga daw ang magturo nito, how should teachers be compensated naman?
Since they are the one who's gonna teach the mental health, things about mental health, I think that it could be a win-win situation since they are teaching, so they're also learning about mental health, and their mental health is also being stable and being talked about. So for me, it's just a win-win situation between the students and the teachers.
Teachers or the experts should have a higher compensation as the psychologists, according to Inquirer.net. There are only one practicing licensed psychologist for every 125,000 Filipino. So if we're going to compensate them, because there are a lot of students enrolled this school year, there are exactly about 26 million for this school year, I think they should have a higher compensation as there are only limited psychologists and there are a lot of students with diverse needs, difficult problems, especially to those that are experiencing a lot worse for their mental health. Students should have their problem should be addressed properly, and I think if it is going to be compensated in a high price or a high cost, I think it would be better for a therapy or a session with a psychologist rather than at school, because the materials or the cost funds needed to provide for an expert would be costly for the school, especially for those that have a low budget. There are private and public schools that have separate budgets for their own schools, as others require a higher tuition and others require a low tuition. I think it will depend on the school if they will pay a high price depending on the problems of the students and the student count of the school.
Alright, so valid points yung ni-raise yung dalawa. So keep that in mind kasi eto naman yung second question natin. So sa mga nabanggit nyo kanina na it could either be an expert or a teacher himself to actually teach the subject, sinasabi natin na mental health is a personal matter. So, kanya-kanya may iba-ibang experience, iba-ibang emotions, iba-ibang circumstances na pinagdadaanan. How can we ensure na yung mga teachers natin will be able to deliver the subject matter with proper sensitivity and care? Kasi kayo nga nagsabi na they may be employed at a higher price or they may not be employed at a higher price, depende sa budget ng ating mga eskwelahan. Tingin nyo, how can they deliver with that role, with enough sensitivity and care when they talk about it in the classrooms?
Teachers will be able to deliver this subject with enough sensitivity and care kapag nabigyan sila ng enough attention and time to fully prepare themselves personally sa subject na ibibigay sa kanila if ever man na ma-implement ng curriculum na to. And just like what Janina have said earlier, it is a win-win situation kasi nga our teachers are already adults. They have more life experiences compared to us teenagers, adolescents, high school students. And in that way, matututunan din ng mga teacher kung paano i-handle yung kanilang emotions, yung kanilang way of thinking kapag may specific situation silang i-face in life. And in that way, may i-apply din nila yon, may i-advise din nila yon sa mga students na makakapag-face din nun once na lumaki na sila.
I do agree with you that teachers would be able to deliver it with a sensitive matter, but how can you compress 4 to 6 years of knowledge and experience in psychology within months or years of preparation? Let's say you take years of preparation, the time and the cost of it is inversely proportional. As the time takes longer, the cost also increases. We are not sure if our country can fund that, especially with a lot of schools, a lot of teachers, and limited experts in the field of psychology. We do not know how long it would take and how much we can spend or how much it would cost our country for it to be developed into the curriculum.
Worth it naman siguro kung matatagalan yung pag-prepare natin para sa subject na to. Kasi nga, malaking tulong din to sa mental health natin. Sabi nga nila, di ba, ang isang, hindi natin ma-expect na ang estudyante ay maging honor student sa school kung yung mental health pa lang nila ay sira na. Kasi makakatulong talaga siya. Hindi lang ngayon na estudyante tayo, kundi makakatulong din siya i-mold tayo to be a better person in the future.
Mental health subject in our curriculum won't be able to cater all of our students due to individual differences. And it's not going to be beneficial for everyone because it's not easily accessible from other parts of our country. How about the underserved or remote areas on our country? Their schools don't have enough fundings to compensate for the professionals that would be facilitating the mental health subject in our community, in our curriculum.
If we
Okay.
propose this curriculum to the government in education, hindi naman talaga natin nire-request na talagang sige, implement na natin yung curriculum sa lahat ng school sa buong bansa, sa buong Pilipinas. We are taking things step by step. And ayun nga, as what you've mentioned earlier, your concern about the remote areas, of course, we have seen different circumstances katulad ng poverty. And pagdating sa poverty, it can cause them mental stress. It can cause them emotional stress as well. So that is one thing, that is one of the biggest things that we need to work on. Kaya nga, we will start off with small steps para ma-reach natin yung mga areas na talagang mas may nangangailangan pa.
If may implement nga natin itong subject na to, paano naman how can you be so sure that this will be beneficial for all the students who is facing mental health struggles? For example, yung isang bata na yon, ayaw niyang mag-open up about sa pinagdadaanan niya sa loob ng classroom. Yung purpose ng pag-i-implement nyo na yon is for the students nga. Paano kung yung yung ayaw mag-open up na yon is yun yung target i-educate. So, do you think it would be useless lang yung pag-i-implement nito?
First of all, we're not forcing them to open up. It's not. Instead, we want to cater their needs, to assist them to figure out what they really feel. Kasi nowadays, ang daming nagsusuicide thinking na ito na lang yung way natin to escape these problems. But with this subject, matutulungan natin sila na mag-reach out, alamin kung itanggapin sa sarili na and alamin na may hope pa.
But given the vast scope of mental health, it requires deeper understanding for students para ma-comprehend nila yung matter na yon. So, kung ayaw nila mag-open up and kung hindi sila nabibigyan ng attention sa loob ng classroom, then it's useless nga. Useless ang pag-i-implement ng mental health
It
subject.
won't be useless because there is a point na hindi naman talaga, we are not teaching students to be truly vocal. We are not telling them to stand up in front of the classroom and share your experience and share what the status of your mental health, emotional health, or whatever you might be feeling. We are not telling the students to come up in front and speak out. We are asking them to fully acknowledge what they are going through. So in that way, talagang mafe-feel nila yung emotions nila in a way na hindi sila magsusuicide, hindi sila gagawa ng bagay na dapat naman hindi talaga nilang ginagawa. And aside from that, ayun nga, just what I have said kanina, we are not telling the students to force themselves to voice out, to use their voice to speak out. We will offer activities that won't require vocals. It will require only the writing skills and all that.
Okay, sige. Habang umiinit yung discussion, no, mas naiintindihan natin yung opinion yung both sides, no, and you have both raised valid points with regards sa mga questions natin. Pero, doon ako sa part ng sinabi nyo kanina na you are not, the avenue of mental health subject is not for students to just speak up. Ngayon, pag-usapan natin yung isa naman sa mga malalaki ding concerns with regards to mental health subject in schools. Sinasabi nila na kapag itinuro ang mental health subject, magba-backfire daw ito. Kasi may risk ito na ma-sensationalize. Kumbaga, mas palalakihin, i-romanticize. So, it's just making up an excuse to not perform in school. That's an actual valid point na na-raise ng isa sa mga nagtatanong regarding this. And it creates daw an inaccurate and negative opinion sa mga estudyante about themselves. Ano sa tingin nyo ang magagawa ng mental health subject curriculum regarding this? Is it to actually romanticize or sensationalize? And how can we prevent that in the classroom?
Okay, so that is why there really is a need to address this issue to the youth and be added to the curriculum for them to figure out what they really feel. And of course, this will, as we said earlier, this will be handled by experts who knows how to deal with students who are experiencing mental health illnesses. So, do we really need to wait for the students to be open up? What if they're already thinking about ending up their lives? How can they be saved then?
As Francine said kanina, you are not going to force the students to open up. If you are not going to force them, how would you make them open up? Like you said, what if they're thinking to end their lives? You cannot approach them properly. And especially when you mentioned the experts, I said practicing licensed psychologists are outnumbered from one out of 125,000 Filipinos. How are you gonna spread those little number of psychologists in around the country? Where are you first going to implement those psychologists? There are a lot of schools in the country, also those that have bigger funds. What about the public schools that have higher count of students than the public schools, but the public schools have a lower funds? So I'm guessing private schools can afford those experts better than the public schools, as they require a tuition and they have a bigger budget.
Okay, so that is why we need the help of the teachers. I'm not saying na yung mga professionals lang yung pupunta sa school to have a one-on-one sessions. No, we don't need that. Kaya nga, sinabi namin kanina na there can be seminars for the teachers.
But what if the teachers are unwilling to teach those students? O given their sa profession nila, marami na sila there are if we were to implement this and if they are the ones to teach this, then it would only increase their workloads and it would add stress. Imbes na matulungan ng mental health nila, mas madadagdagan pa ito.
Okay, so sige, habang nag-uusap kayo about your question about this topic. So again ang tanong natin, paano hindi maroromanticize or masasensationalize ito sa loob ng mga classrooms? Kasi again, ginagamit daw ang mental health as an excuse to underperform in classes. So yun yung tanong Pero syempre, dagdagan na natin ng katanong, baka mas may sagot kayo dito. Kung hindi maglalagay ng mental health subject sa curriculum, we're asking for a proposal. How can the school contribute in addressing the mental health concern of the students? Kung masasali naman kaya ito sa curriculum, do you think there is an adequate mental health service already provided in schools?
I think there is an alternative beside na sa pag-implement ng mental health subject sa curriculum by integrating mental health topics sa subject natin wherein sa MAPE, right? Meron tayo doon component na health. So I think it's much better if we integrate na lang natin yung mental health sa MAPE para hindi lamang mabigyang focus yung physical health natin but also our mental health well-being.
Yes, meron nga. Pero sa tingin mo ba nafofokusan natin yon? MAPE, health. Branch lang ng MAPE yung health. So ibig sabihin may iba pang components na pinagfofokusan ng subject. Minsan nga, di ba yung mga health natin, since huli siya sa component, hindi na siya gano'n napagfofokusan. By this subject, or if ever man madadagdag siya, malaking tulong to para mapagfokusan natin yung mental health natin. Kasi nga, ito yung isa sa mga pinakamalaking problema natin. Para sa amin, oo meron, pero hindi nga napagfokusan yung mental health natin talaga by that subject.
Well, I do agree with your point na hindi siya gano'n na-focus sa health, since health also covers our physical health, which is mainly doon nag-circulate yung MAPE or yung health component. But to the earlier question, I don't think we can avoid romanticizing this, as students will use it as an excuse to not do or perform in other subjects as well or participate. They can say that it would affect their mental health negatively. It could put their mental health at risk, or maybe they're just using it as an excuse, as there are a lot of students that are already failing with our current curriculum with 8 subjects. If we're gonna add another, won't that increase the count or the numbers of uninterested students, and won't the number of dropouts increase? And I think if we're going to integrate mental health into schools, I think this idea should be proposed by the teachers towards the parents, as I think parents should be the one that should address this matter to their kids, because all problems should be settled by their parents, by the parents to their kids, because everything should start from your own family.
Yes, it is true that it needs to start in your family. Pero sa tingin mo ba, yung mga parents ngayon is woke about yung topic na yan? Hindi ba yung generation nila, since dati hindi pa masyadong open yung tao sa gantong bagay, they really don't think na valid yung gantong reason natin para lang sa mga actions natin. So, do you really think na yung mga estudyante is mas gugustuhin nilang magsabi sa parents nila?
Do you think the students will be open to their classmates or teachers or the experts that
We are not fully saying na magiging open sila sa other people or their peers. We are not proving.
Pero kung hindi sila open sa parents nila, 'di ba, paano pa sila makakapag-open sa friends nila and sa classmates nila kung hindi na nga sila open sa parents nila?
Uulitin ko, hindi namin sila fino-force mag-open up. Instead, gusto namin i-cater or i-guide sila sa nararamdaman nila kasi hindi naman yun yung nangyayari sa loob ng bahay. Sabi nga kanina, hindi natin o hindi mas napaprioritize. Minsan nga nasasabihan pa sila na madrama lang, di ba?
Yeah, pero paano mo makikater yung diverse needs ng bawat students when there are 26 billion students,
You are not
including
the
us?
one inside their shoes. So you shouldn't be the one to judge them kung ano magiging reaction nila sa gagawing curriculum na to. And we are telling you, we are pointing out that hindi nga namin pino-force yung students na mag-voice out to other people around them. We are trying to point out that students should be smart enough to acknowledge what they feel personally. Kung hindi nila kaya magsalita, kung hindi nila kaya mag-open up sa ibang tao, pwede sila mag-open up sa sarili nila. Pwede nilang i-sort yun sa sarili nila muna bago sila mag-voice out sa iba.
As I said, di na dapat aware ka or informed sa nararamdaman mo. It should be addressed by an expert. How are you going to handle 26 million students if you don't know what an expert is going through? Alam mo kung gaano karaming stress yung dinadanas sila. There are many patients as well that are not students. Meron din mga adults na nangangailangan ng help ng psychologists. How are you going to address all of the needs of the citizens kung magpo-focus lang kayo sa youth, marami din nangangailangan sa experts. You cannot address all 26 million.
That is why we need to address this issue to the youth. Kasi nga, sa dami ng youth ngayon, at alam naman natin na, di ba sinabi nga nila na ang kabataan ng pag-asa ng bayan. So, bakit hindi nyo muna simulan sa kabataan para ma-share nila sa ibang generation?
Paano mo maa-address yung ganong karami ng students given that there is gaya nga na sinabi ni Francis, according to Enquirer.net, merong there is a ratio of one licensed practicing psychologist for every 125,000 Filipinos. So paano mo nga mabibigyan ng tuon yung iba't ibang problema na nararanasan ng mga student kung isa lang yung magiging professional sa loob ng classroom? Might as well mag-consult ka na lang directly sa psychiatrist or sa psychologist.
So, tingin mo ba kaya nilang mag-consult sa professional? Kung sabi ko nga, di ba kanina, hindi woke yung parents nila and yung elders about this topic. And sa tingin mo ba lahat ng estudyante is kayang mag-afford? Sabi nyo nga kanina, may issue about poverty. Since sinabi nyo yun, paano nila makakayanang pumunta sa professional if dun pa lang hindi na natin sila matutulungan?
That's your point, poverty, right? Where our country is going through poverty right now. If families cannot afford a session or a therapy to a psychologist, how do you think our country would fund implementing the curriculum into our education? Kung maliit pala yung gastos sa therapy, paano kaya kung millions ang gagastusin kung i-implement mo yung curriculum? Marami yung kailangan natin gastusin sa materials, sa teachers din, sa pag-seminar. You cannot compress 4 to 6 years of knowledge and experience in a few months.
Hindi naman natin sinabing, i-compress mo yung 4 to 6 years na knowledge nila. Hindi naman natin sinabing, yung mga estudyante na nasa high school ngayon, is tuturuan mo para maging psychologist agad.
Then
Hindi,
what are you implementing?
ang sinasabi namin is, tuturuan natin yung mga estudyante kung ano ba talaga yung ibig sabihin ng mental health at kung ano ba talaga ang nararamdaman nila bilang tao.
As I said, iba yung pagiging aware sa pag-address ng problem. If you're just aware and di mo kayang i-address yun, mas lalala yung problem mo and it can put your mental health at risk.
Alright, so maraming salamat sa ating mga debaters. Pero puputulin muna namin ang inyong diskusyon dahil natunghayan natin yung batuhan ng inyong mga magagandang punto. Siyempre, lalo na sa latter part, no? Feel na feel natin, mas ramdam nyo yung mga tanong natin sa ating mga debaters. Kaya naman, Felicians, ano ang reactions nyo dyan? Is it a yes or no? Dapat bang i-include sa ang mental health subject sa ating mga eskwelahan? Mamaya naman malalaman natin ang tanong mula sa ating mga audiences. Kaya naman huwag kayong aalis at lahat ng yan ay sa pagbabalik lamang ng Schoolmates!